All right, so I talked about the Bills about 2.5 months ago. After they lost to the Tennessee Titans, they got destroyed 42-16 on Tuesday Night Football. I rendered it as a fluke. I rendered it the worst game for the Bills of their season, the best game of the Titans for their season. And here we are 2 months later. Looks like that is exactly the case. The Titans are a pretty good team. I think they're what, 10-4? But the Bills are 11-3. And, as a retrospect, this season has gone really well. Now, the Bills' 3 losses in their defense have come to 3 good teams. They lost to the Chiefs, who are 13-1. They lost to the Titans, who are 10-4. And they lost to the Cardinals, who I believe are 8-6. So they didn't slip up against what you would consider a bad team. And people are saying the Bills haven't beat anyone, which I just think is ridiculous. Because I personally would think that the Bills probably have one of, if not the best resumes, not only in the AFC, but honestly just in the whole NFL. Because they beat the Raiders, who I think they're 7-7. Decent team. They beat the Rams, who are, I think, 9-5. They beat the Seahawks, who I think are 10-4 as well. They beat the Dolphins, who are 9-5. They beat the Steelers, who are 11-3. I mean, they've beaten right there. That's 5 quality-ass teams, And so I think people are full of shit with that comment, personally. I think it's stupid. Yeah, they got to play the Jets twice. But, I mean, couple that with, 3 of those 5 teams are going to make the playoffs for sure. And the Bills took care of them. And I mean, one of their losses, I consider the NFL a give and take. Yeah, the Bills lost on a last-second Hail Mary, and that was really tragic and very frustrating, especially because Josh Allen played well enough to win that game. And he showed me that I'm going to buy into him. I trust in Josh Allen because he threw, 95 to, I would say 90 to 95% of the time you throw a go-ahead touchdown that puts you up by, I think, 4 with like 30 seconds left. Unless you're playing against like a Mahomes, a Breeze, or like a Brady, 90 to 95% of the time, that's good enough to win a game. And that's impressive. I mean, because not a lot of quarterbacks can do that shit. It's one thing to, inside 2 or 3 minutes to drive down to kick a field goal to win it or tie it. But to throw a touchdown, that was impressive. Very impressive. And the fluky Hail Mary, absolutely a fluke. I don't care what anybody says. They could have done that play 30 more times, and they would have been super lucky to have it work the way it did again. But, yeah, the Bills lost on a last-second Hail Mary. But, don't forget, the Bills also, they won a game against the Patriots off a pretty lucky fumble at the end. Well, you can call it luck. I mean, he stripped them, but, could have easily not happened, right? And then also the Rams game. Straight. I mean, if they don't get that pass interference call, the game ends, right? So it's a give and take league. And so I don't think that should be dismissed upon, but at the same time, you're going to have luck and you're going to have, breaks that go your way. And that's, I think, what makes the NFL such a good game. But the Bills, now they're sitting at 11-3, which is insane. I don't think they've won 11 games since the 90s. They won the AFC East, and I'm just going to be straight up with you. And I'm pretty cynical when it comes to my Bills. I usually doubt them. I don't consider them as good as others might and how they are actually performing if they were a different team. But I am getting a ton of faith in their offense, and in particular their passing game. Josh Allen, I think, has 38 total touchdowns, including 30 through the air, which, I mean, to me, 30 is the threshold for what I would consider a good season by a quarterback. Because there's only, 10 or so good quarterbacks every year. And, he has 30 passing and 8 rushing. And I think there's a good chance he's going to finish with 34, 35 touchdowns, maybe 8, 9, 10 rushing touchdowns. I mean, if he can account for, 44, 45 total touchdowns. I mean, come on, how could you can't possibly ask for a better season than that. I'm just going to say straight up. I don't think he's going to win the MVP. I don't think he should. I think he is probably, I would say he's probably like third if I were to try and objectively rank them. I would say it kind of depends how each of these teams finish, but I would say Mahomes and Rodgers are kind of 1A, 1B. I think if Mahomes goes 15-1 and he has like 1,000 more yards or something than Rodgers, and he's only got a couple less touchdowns, but I feel like if he can go 15-1, I would say there's a hard, voters would have a hard time picking between the two. But at the same time, if Rodgers, who I think is like 39 or 40 touchdown passes, if he lights it up against the Bears and I don't remember who their next opponent is. I think it's the Titans. I think they got the Bears and the Titans left. I mean, if he lights it up, throws for 5, 6, 7 touchdowns in the next 2 games, I mean, it'll be hard for them to, pick a winner, because I believe the Packers are 11-3 or 10-4. And I mean, if they go 13-3 and, he finishes with 45, 46 passing touchdowns, I mean, it's going to be a tight race. But, Josh Allen, on the other hand, he's having a fantastic season. I think he's having a season. He's definitely going to be all-pro. But once again, will he be first-team all-pro? Probably not, because I believe there's 2 quarterbacks for first-team all-pro, the top 2, and Rodgers and Mahomes. I think unfortunately, they're just a tier above. But, I mean, you never know. If Josh Allen has 2 really good games, against the Patriots and the Jets, maybe they can swing it. Maybe he can slide into the All-Pro slot. I don't think he's going to win the MVP, but he has showed me that this man can fucking play. Say what you want about his supporting cast. I think he has a phenomenal supporting cast. He hasn't been playing with John Brown, though, and so I think that kind of brings his receiving core and his offensive supporting cast, I guess, back down to earth a little bit. I mean, when John Brown comes back, this Bills offense, especially with the way Zach Moss and Singletary have been running of late, and how Dawson Knox has become more consistent each week. I mean, all of these people saying that the Bills are the only team that can take down the Chiefs, I'm going to start to believe it, especially because this team is doing something that really good teams, unlike how the Bills have historically have played, that's how they play, right? They heat up. And when I say heat up, they become burning hot come December and into January. And the Bills are playing as good as anybody. Since the Hail Murray, they have been dominant. Maybe with the exception of like the Chargers, and I believe the Jets game was after that as well. But I mean, they have kicked ass, all right? Had their best game last week against, a below average Broncos team that was kind of depleted on defense, but Josh Allen had 4 touchdowns. The defense, I believe, had a touchdown. Yeah, Jerry Hughes had a crazy fumble recovery off a strip sack from Tre'Davious White. I mean, they hands down, as much of a blowout as the Broncos or the Titans-Bills game was, it was kind of a script flip for the Broncos-Bills game. I don't know if that was the Broncos' worst game, because they had a game against the Raiders where they just Drew Lock threw like 4 interceptions, I think. So I don't know if it was their worst game of the season, but it was definitely the Bills' best game all around. Because, some people might point to the Seahawks game, but I mean, low-key, Russell Wilson had a pretty big day. The Bills kept the Broncos to under like 250 yards of offense. They only had like 19 points. I mean, it was a total effort. I mean, they scored almost 50. So that was amazing. And the Bills are heating up. They're getting hot at the right time. Teams that historically go deep in the playoffs and or make it / win the Super Bowl, they are the ones who start to really pick up and catch fire, weeks 13, 14, 15, 16 and on. And I'm really excited about that. Right now, they're the 2nd seed, which is really exciting. And they're in line to play what would be the 7th seed. And as of now, the playoff picture looks like the Ravens and the Dolphins are 7 or 8th and 7th seed respectively. The Ravens are currently the 8th seed. The Dolphins are the 7th seed. And I'll be honest, of all of the teams the Bills would likely play, which would be the Browns, the Dolphins, the Ravens, the Titans, and the Colts, I would say the Ravens and Dolphins are two teams that I don't really want to play, because the Dolphins, you'll be playing them a third time and you'd potentially getting them back to fucking back, which would just be crazy. That would be wild. And, you know, historically, teams don't usually beat another 3 times in one season. And I wonder if that's ever, there's no way that's happened in the history of the NFL, I feel like. To a team to play week 17 and week 1 or the wild card round of the playoffs, and it'd be in the same setting too. It'd be in Buffalo both fucking times. That would just be ridiculous, you know? And like for the Bills, they still have to play for that 2nd seed, because the Steelers, I mean, they dropped 3 in a row, but they're currently, the Bills hold the 2nd seed due to a tiebreaker because they're both 11-3. But like, you kind of have to feel like, depending on how things break down, and I think the Steelers have the Browns and the Colts left on their schedule, so they have a pretty tough close. If the Bills can catch like a 1-game lead on the Steelers, because I believe they also have a 1-game lead on the Titans and the Colts, if they can find a way to potentially like bench their starters for week 17 or kind of play loose and then turn it up the wild card round, if they do happen to play the Dolphins again, that would be pretty cool. That would be pretty interesting. But no, I mean, you know, the Ravens, I personally do not fear Lamar Jackson, but at the same time, this Ravens team more or less has the same makeup core team that they had last year, which was, I think it was just one of those situations where just everything kind of fell into place. Everybody played their ass off. Lamar Jackson was MVP. Their defense was really good. I mean, they had a top 5 offense, like a top 6 defense. I mean, it was just, I don't want to say it was a fluke season, but just, it kind of reminds me of how the Bills are playing, where just everybody who could step up did step up, save for that playoff game. But I mean, that's a scary ass team. The Dolphins, while I don't fear them very much, because of, I mean, let's just be real here. Tua is playing, he's playing like a rookie. He's playing like, you know, I think his best game is like 2 total touchdowns and like 260 yards pass. I mean, Tua will not beat you. But with that Dolphins team, man, and they've done it against some good ass teams. All right, they did it to the Rams. They did it to the Patriots. You can say what you want, but I mean, they've beaten some quality ass opponents, the Cardinals, by virtue of, if you give them an inch, whether that's through special teams or defense, or, you know, offense, they'll take a yard, right? So Tua is likely not going to beat you through the air unless you have just a break in coverage or somebody makes a special play as a running back or something. But I mean, if you fumble that ball, or if you throw an interception, or you let Jakeem Grant get some nice blocks set up, they'll take advantage. All right. And also, they're your division rival. You know, they're a team that you will have played twice already this season. And I mean, it was a pretty close game week 2, with, albeit Ryan Fitzpatrick, who I believe under pressure, he's pretty, under pressure, he's historically been terrible. And I mean, they went like 5-11 last year. This year, they kind of had no expectations because they're still kind of in their rebuild. They still have draft picks for next year. And so he kind of played his ass off, and he played as he normally plays, Fitzmagic type shit, because there were no expectations, and he had a fucking really good game against the Bills. But both of the teams are much different than they were week 2. Just like the Bills, the Dolphins defense has improved mightily, and their offense is completely different. Bills, more or less, have been airing it out similar to how they were in Miami, but the game being in Buffalo, don't think you're nearly going to have the aerial presence that you did when it was 80 degrees in Miami, when it's going to be probably in the 20s or 30s if you're lucky in Buffalo, with potential snow everywhere. Yeah, so the 7th and 8th seed, those are the teams I fear more than some of the others. You know, the Browns, am not really scared of Baker Mayfield. However, the Bills defense, which has improved massively, I would say they have improved to the point where they are probably a tier below and or maybe similar quality when it comes to how they've played 17, 18, 19. Because, you know, this year for a large majority, the Bills defense, whether it was running or passing, was terrible, specifically on the run game. But they have improved a lot. But, you know, regardless, the Browns rushing attack is not one to overlook, you know, because if you thought Nick Chubb was really good, I mean, they also have Kareem Hunt, who led the league in rushing, who's, I think, in his 4th season, and he's, you know, capable of you know, doing a lot of damage on the ground. And their defense has got, you know, a guy like Myles Garrett who can really fuck your shit up. So the Browns in Buffalo, in what would likely be a game where the Browns relied heavily on running the ball, that's no slouch. The Titans, they ultimately, I think, in what was a fluke game, once again, worst game for the Bills, best game for the Titans, and it's clearly shown in, you know, the time since. In fairness, the Titans have proved to be still a good, very good team. The Bills have improved massively upon that performance, and they're nowhere near the same team they were when they played Tennessee in, I think it was week 4 or week 5. But I mean, you know, you want to talk about a guy like Derrick Henry, and I'm granted he had like 50 or 60 yards against the Bills in that game, and I mean, they just dominated him through the air and ranted about it for like 20 minutes, and ultimately I was correct in my conclusion from that little ramble I did. But, you know, we know that they can beat through the air, and I'm sure in Buffalo in January, if the Bills have to play them in the wild card round, they'll have no problem running it down the Bills' throat. And so the Titans are not necessarily a team I would be happy with playing. The team I think I would be most apt, and the team I think the Bills would have the best chance at, would honestly be the Colts, who are currently leading their division, praying that the Bills can somehow play them, which I don't really think it's in the cards, because they are currently 10-4, and I believe they're the 3rd seed, or maybe the 4th seed, but they would not only have to drop to the wild card spot, but they would likely have to drop to either the 6th or the 7th seed for the Bills to have a realistic chance. But I like the Bills' odds of playing against a visibly regressed Phillip Rivers, and what is a pretty good running game, but not one that I think is capable of lighting the world on fire like somebody like the Titans or the Browns can do. And they do have a very good defense, but the way Josh is playing, I'm not necessarily scared of really any defense in the NFL with how he's playing. I mean, he's just been lights out, and Stephon Diggs is fucking impossible to cover, it seems, and I don't necessarily think they have a cornerback who can completely blanket him. I know they have Xavier Rhodes, but I mean, come on, it's not 2016 anymore. He's not very good. So the Colts are actually the team that I would want the Bills to play the most, as crazy as that sounds. But, you know, the Bills, they are the 2nd seed. I think there's a good chance they finish 13-3. 12-4 does sound realistic, because one way or another, the Bills may potentially not have the world to play for week 17 against the Dolphins. I highly doubt that, though, because the Dolphins are in the playoff chase. The Bills are very much in the playoff chase. They have seeding at play for sure. Some people were thinking to rest Josh Allen week 17. I think that's fucking ridiculous, because, you know, the difference between the 2nd and 3rd seed, while there is no bye week, unfortunately, and, you know, I saw a meme, it was bad luck Bills. They get the 2nd seed in the first season where you don't get a bye. That fucking sucks. But, you know, not only are you going to have the chance to improve your own record, but, you know, to knock out a division rival from the playoffs, I mean, you can take it if you can get it. So, ultimately, though, I think the Bills, I would be shocked if they lost both of these games. I would be surprised if they even lost one of these games. I think that the Patriots, Cam Newton has 5 passing touchdowns all season, although they did play really tough last time they played. I think the Patriots, in a weird way, since it's at home, it's in New England for the Patriots, it's a home game. I think the Bills have a greater chance of losing to the Patriots than I do the Dolphins, just because I know the Patriots historically have not done too well against the Bills without Tom Brady in the Tom Brady era or in the time since he's been in the league. I still think that there's a bit of a mystical variable at play when it comes to the Bills, because, I mean, they just could not hold a candle to Tom Brady while he was there, and, you know, Belichick is still there, and I think Josh Allen, he has improved massively, but I still wouldn't put it past him to, you know, have one of his lesser games against a Bill Belichick coached team, but he has showed out in prime time recently, so something to look out for. But, you know, the Patriots, I do think, are a bigger threat than the Dolphins, and the fact that they don't really have anything to play for, I think, excuse me, is an added threat. But I mean, I like the Bills to beat the Patriots. I think they have like a 60 to 70% chance to beat them. And, you know, based on what's happening with Miami in week 17, barring some sort of lockup of a seed, I think the Bills will have a similar odds of beating the Dolphins, because they have improved. They're a wily, scrappy little team. But I don't fear Tua, and they're playing in Buffalo. They're not playing in sunny Miami. So I think the Bills will go 13-3. I like them. Honestly, every single team except for the Chiefs, I think the Bills are more than capable of beating everybody else in the AFC. Seriously, I think they would be favored in every matchup they would have except for the Kansas City Chiefs. And even in the NFC, I think that I legitimately think the Bills are the second best team in the NFL. I really do. And I'm really excited to see, you know, if we could fast forward a month from now to see if the Bills are still alive and or where they finished. I think AFC Championship is very possible. Although I think the Chiefs, I don't want to say they're untouchable, but, you know, they looked beatable against the Saints. That is true. Drew Brees was not good, and I think that was a big reason for the Chiefs' victory and the Saints' loss. There's something about the Chiefs that just is like, they just don't seem like they can lose. And I don't know how the Raiders did it to them almost twice, but they did. But I personally don't think there's anybody in the Chiefs class. And the Chiefs drubbed the shit out of the Bills. Granted, it was a long time ago. Bills are not the same team, but they beat them on the ground. And we know, everybody knows what the Chiefs can do through the air. So, I'm scared for the Bills. I don't think they can make the Super Bowl. I don't think anybody can beat the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs will be Super Bowl champs. I'm looking forward to watching this back, listening back to this. Max, how's life? How is IT? How's the program in January? But Bills, hoping if they get to play the Ravens, that'll be an interesting matchup. If they get to play the Browns, that'll be an interesting matchup. They get to play the Dolphins. Again, that would be a really interesting matchup. I think the Bills can beat anybody in the AFC, save for the Chiefs. I think it could beat anybody in the NFC. Be interesting to see how they would do against the Packers. But the Bills' defense is hot. They're getting after the quarterback. The DBs are making plays. Everybody's fucking healthy. John Brown's coming back. I've never been more confident in a Buffalo Bills team. Not even close to the level at which I am now confident in them. So these next couple weeks, it's going to be fun.